Good evening, everyone. I hope all is well. And I welcome you. I pray that your day was successful. And if it felt like a setback, then I pray tomorrow be even better. And that you take it slow. There are some things, as we deal with them, that seem like losses when they're actually wins. And at times we are faced with our own expectations being the issue. And tonight, the title of the sermon is The Generous versus the Jealous. We're going to be in Matthew chapter 20, verses 1 through 16. And this is it's an interesting story because Jesus is laying out kind of a strange economic theory, if you will, for the sake of teaching. And I know there's more to this. We're going to teach the lesson as it's presented. But Jesus was constantly pointing to things that would unfold. And if you remember the story of the prodigal son, there's a point where upon the son's return, they kill the fatted calf. And the elder son, who is entitled to everything that is left. Oh, and it's all his. No, it's too late. No, I'm just kidding. He was upset because the father had never given him a fatted calf for he and his friends. And his point was, you already own all of them. You've been faithful. Sit still. Relax. Rejoice in this, in the fact that your brother's returned home and he's become a humble person. So 3 points tonight. 1, God is the giver of purpose. It is the Father who sought us out. That is something to remember in each and every season. And there are times that our eyes will drift. And this is an interesting lesson for discussions I've had throughout the day and discussions I'm having about future discussions. It's God who sought us out. It's God who set the table. It's God who has provided absolutely everything that is needed. And one thing to keep in mind in this story is Jesus is telling a parable. He's not laying out an economic formula for business. He's definitely not. He's pointing to a more significant work that is going to unfold. And we're going to talk about the hearts that are involved tonight. Okay, that's one thing that we've got to, man, in every point of our life, not only does God not owe us anything, but most people don't either. But God definitely doesn't owe us anything. The generosity of God is beyond what we can imagine, and we are actually the ones indebted to Him. Off the start. Point 2 tonight, God rewards justly. Be confident, be quiet. I think the third is important. We can talk ourselves out of blessing really easy. And especially when our anxieties and our insecurities take the forefront. I'm a business guy. I like it. I like the opportunities it presents and the risks and the reward. And there are points in business that you have to be confident in what you know, and at other times you have to be quiet and kind of let things play out. And if you are interested in that route, you're going to have to become comfortable in wins and losses. You're going to have to deal with things as they unfold. And if every loss is the end of the world, then a business owner you might not be. Okay? It's just part of the game. It's just part of the game. If it's always supposed to be rainbows and butterflies, you're going to be disappointed. But Jesus tells this story and begins to contrast behaviors between those that were entitled and those that would have gone hungry. The generosity of the owner of the field belonged to the owner. The money belonged to the owner. And you might have heard me say this before, but it is a dangerous thing to start counting other people's money. In the circumstance you are in, you're probably in it for a few reasons. Maybe some of them are outside of your control. But counting other people's money is not going to get you to the place of heart and mind you need to be. It's not going to settle you. It's going to continually ring the bell of things being unfair. And it's interesting, sometimes people will declare certain situations unfair and they have no idea what has actually unfolded. It's just our anxiety speaking. It's just our anxiety speaking. Point 3, contentment is healing. Don't let anybody tell you different. They'll tell you, oh, you got to go get what's yours. You got to do this. You got to do that. And I'm all for it. The Bible declares very clearly, as Paul writes in Thessalonians, that a man who will not work is worse than an infidel. I mean, they're considered an infidel. That the church is to, in effect, shun them and shame them. And although I don't agree with everything that has unfolded in certain speakers' life, but or pastors or any number of things, but I do agree with Mark Driscoll in this, is that men need to be out in the world and they need to risk. And the household needs to reflect the input of that man. And if that man refuses to do that, then he's refusing to be a man. That's just the facts. All right. So I guess, Mama Bear, if you're the breadwinner, I get it. We talk about all this modern stuff and whatever else, but a household that is functioning within the confines of the word is going to be one in which the man is pushed to the forefront. And he has to be. He has to be. If he refuses, he's refusing his call and he's an apostate. That's just it. No ifs, ands, or buts. If you don't like that, then you're not a Christian. I'm sorry, men. If you don't like that, the word declares so clearly that a refusal to provide is a refusal of Christ. You go read it. I'm not the one that wrote it. I'm not the one that wrote it. So let's dive in tonight, verses 1 through 16 of Matthew chapter 20. Matthew chapter 20, verses 1 through 16. Let's read it. For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. And by the way, that's hard work, and I appreciate people that do it. But listen, we Americans need to be doing this. Not everybody knows this, but my family, when they first came here, and I'm not talking about the Italians, I'm talking about the Germans, they were working in the fields. That's what they did. That's what they did. My grandfather used to tell me stories of them working in the fields, and even at a point, at 14 years old, driving all the way into Oakland and doing different things. That's what they did. In fact, my grandpa Garrett pointed one time to a barn that he and his family lived in when they moved out here to Victor. That's where they lived. Maybe we become a little soft, you know what I mean? So one thing for me that I think about is if it's not immoral or illegal, I'm probably going to do it. So just a heads up as a business guy, if the choice is between 0 or whatever, I'm not going to choose 0. So it just is what it is. Keep moving, work, keep your head down, work. Just get it done. All right? When he had agreed with the laborers for a denarius for the day, he sent them into his vineyard. When he had a contract, right? Verbal contract. And he went out about the 3rd hour and saw others standing idly by in the marketplace. Now notice, that each time it is the landowner that is going out and getting his labor force. The labor force is not finding him. He's finding them. And to those he said, you go into the vineyard also, and whatever is right, I will give you. And so they went. Again, he went out about the 6th hour and the 9th hour and did the same thing. And about the 11th hour, he went out and found others standing around. And he said to them, why have you been standing here idle all day long? They said to him, because no one hired us. He said to them, you go into the vineyard too. Let's go back to point one. Point one again is, God is the giver of purpose. It was the Father who sought them out. It's the Father who sought us out. The parable Christ tells is not a formula for business. It is meant to contrast the conditions of the day against the generosity of God. The Father does not owe anybody anything. In fact, all are indebted to him. He is the provider of purpose. He is the one that has given us life, and he's the one that promises us hope if we are willing to live the life he has prescribed. The individuals found in the market were facing hunger because they were workless or idle. It is possible some may have been lazy, but the story is not meant to focus is meant to focus on their employer. Notice that it doesn't give a description of the workers other than they've been idle. And their answer is, hey, nobody's come to give us work. So in some respects, it may be similar to people waiting in front of Home Depot for day labor. But all he found in the marketplace were waiting for work, and all of them were going to face hunger if they did not get work for that day. And I don't know that our country is so full of food. I think very few understand that hunger was not foreign to certain people groups. It just wasn't, and it may still not be. But to have a full belly, if you will, to eat past just being content, but being full, to some was a rarity. But again, this story is going to focus on the employer. We already understand that the condition of things for the employees was desperate. For those waiting in the market, they were desperate. The parable is setting the stage to challenge the jealous, the self-centered. It is not to initiate an unsustainable wage scale. And in many respects, why things are difficult here in the state of California and why they have to keep raising minimum wage is because they are economic morons and failures. I do want to take just a minute, if I may, to educate you economically, okay? When you have a competitive job market, one, as wages rise artificially, so do the costs of goods. It's just part and parcel. Every company will adjust and move and pass the cost of any increase in their bottom line onto their purchasers. That's how it works. But if you have a competitive job market and you have more jobs than you have workers, which is a sign of a healthy economy, then you have a competitive wage market as well, which means I, as an employer, am going to approach the employee with the mindset of making sure that my offer is not only competitive, but better than the offers that have been given prior to mine or that come after. This is why when you deal with minimum wage and people talk about taking care of the working poor, if you will, it is the minimum wage that keeps people poor. Every time they move the market, they close, if you will, off positions for entry-level workers. That's why our young are not working, and that's why people need more education, if you will, than they should to get a job. It's ridiculous. I went through a period where I was actually overqualified for most jobs, and I fell into this category, according to some of these headhunters, of what they call a purple squirrel, which they don't exist. And the issue I had getting a job was the fact that no one wanted to risk, because they knew as soon as the job market improved that I'd be gone. Well, why is that? Because things would once again become competitive. So I couldn't even land a gig when things were tight during 2008. I got really lucky to find a job. Really lucky. So you can land on either side of the scale, but there should always be entry-level jobs. It should not be difficult to find a job. And a lot of what I believe is going on is conspiratorial, and we just need a better work ethic. We do not need to be importing labor. We don't need to be importing labor. We don't. So if I ever run for any sort of office or whatever else, you'll probably hear this again. But nonetheless, the importation of labor is the admission that we have failed in our training. Okay, we need trade schools, and we need lots of things going on in this country. All right? So 2028, woohoo. I don't know. Anyway, the parable is setting the stage to challenge the jealous and the self-centered, not initiate an unsustainable wage scale. Christ brings a very eccentric economist into the story, because in reality, an employer could do whatever they pleased. All right? At that point in time, if you read the book of James, it talks about the harvest that had been done and the fact that workers were denied their wage. Now, all of what I said earlier is not to say that people don't have devious plans for their workers. Of course they do. But there were companies before we ever had laws, if you will, bringing a better work environment to their employees. It's true. If you want to study that, you can see it about Henry Ford, and then you can see how the Dodge brothers, who were stakeholders in Ford, sued Ford so that he couldn't improve the situation for the workers. And that's where we ended up with a lot of our laws about how stakeholders take priority, which is why the stock market and a bunch of that other stuff is trash. Okay? So Ford very much implemented a work week that was sustainable, paid guys what they were worth, and gave them plenty. And then you have two communists who are the Dodge brothers. You can look them up if you want to, and you can consider, because they were communists, how they wanted to work and what they wanted to do and how they didn't care for the workers. It's out there. It's just out there. Okay. You do also know that car companies, to a degree, would lobby for stricter emission standards so that other companies would spend more money. Not because cars really are super dirty. We're fine. End all smog laws. Let's get over it. James chapter 4, verse 10. I've got plenty of political commentary tonight. What's going on with me? I must have had too much sun. Here's what James writes. Humble yourselves in the presence of the Lord, and it'll be he that exalts you. Maybe you're going through a season right now. Maybe you're looking at the injustices. Maybe you're considering all of the things that shoulda, coulda, woulda. And I'm not saying those aren't true. I'm just asking the concentration on such things. Is it bettering your position? Like I said, in business and in life, there have been wins and losses. I don't spend a lot of time focused on the losses beyond figuring out what I could have done differently to mitigate those things. Okay? And if there are things I don't know, then I find examples of people that have done it, or I find people that are doing it, and I either watch or I ask questions. Okay? If you get jealous, you're going to shut down. It's just the case. Your vision will narrow and your brain will get smaller. That's how it works. Yeah. You think I'm kidding? Go look. Point 2, God rewards justly. Be confident and be quiet. Why is that? Because the generosity of God is above question. Well, let's see how that unfolds in verse 8. My computer will sit still. And now when evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, call the laborers and pay them their wages, starting with the last group to the first. Ooh, what a test. There are carryovers. There are carryovers as it relates to other things that unfold scripturally, but focus. This is where we're at right now. When those hired about the 11th hour came, each one received a denarius. Interesting, if you remember the beginning of the story, those who worked from the beginning were promised what? A denarius. And so when those hired first came, they thought, say that with me tonight, they thought, in another way you could say, they assumed, and that causes issues. They assumed that they would receive more, but each of them also received a denarius. Now, why is that important? Okay? Because all of those who worked now could afford food. All of them. All of them could afford food. Whether they were hired in the 11th hour, or they were hired at first, they now all had the means to purchase food. It was a day's wage. They had been in the marketplace in whatever state they were. Now, if you're a thinker, which in my mind, I still have a harvest, right? I still have days to be worked, correct? I need people. Is it going to benefit me to have hungry workers? Like, how do I make more then? Okay, put aside the generosity part of it. Just let's think, okay? And maybe you think, well, that's self-centered. That's ridiculous. Both parties are benefiting. If I have a group of workers that are hungry, I need to feed them to gain the most productivity out of them, okay? Otherwise, I will get less work during the day from hungry workers than I will from those who know that, hey, I'm going to be sustained, all right? Productivity goes up. It goes up. So this guy, to a degree, this parable is doing himself a favor because individuals are not coming back the next day hungry. But they're going to come back. They're going to remember. There are things that I have done for business where I'm just hating every last second of it, but I know it's going to pay off. Like, it's just no fun. It's just no fun. But the investment is worth it. And I think in this story, you could find that. You could look at it and say, man, a day's wage, what does a day's wage buy? Well, depends on how you determine a day's, what's a day worth. And if it's food and it's covering, it's gone in a day. Think about it. Think about it. Nonetheless, here we are. And so those hired first came, they thought they would receive more, but each of them received a denarius. When they received it, they grumbled at the landowner. Smart. Stupid. Keep your mouth shut. Verse 12 saying, these who were hired last worked only 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us who have borne the burden of the day's work and the scorching heat. Notice who they're talking to. The one that found them doing nothing. And now there's something because they've had to suffer a little. And so because they have to suffer, they either deserve what they got and the other party deserves less. But because now it is equal, they deserve more? Okay. These who were hired last worked only 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us who have borne the burden of the day's work and scorching heat. Interesting. It's not your field. It's not your harvest. It's not even your work. It's the work he had to offer you. And you're complaining. It isn't enough. It'll never be enough. The unpleasable will always be unpleasable until they decide that they are the jerks they actually are. That's just how it works. That's just how it works. But he answered and said to one of them, Friend, which I'm sure he was being nice, I am doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for a denarius? So it only became unacceptable when they had something to compare it to. Notice that, right? Comparisons will murder you. Notice that it only became unacceptable when they had something to compare it to. Maybe you found that in your life. Maybe you were doing something and you thought it was great until it was compared to something else. And there's always room to improve. I don't want you to lose track of that. But if all of a sudden you're just filled with anger and hate because somebody's killing it, you shouldn't be. You shouldn't be. If you can learn to be grateful, if you can learn to applaud, if you can learn to love and cherish and celebrate other people's successes, you're going to do better. You're going to do better. I'm telling you, it's so much better for your brain. It is. God designed us a certain way. And when you're bitter and short-sighted and ridiculous about cool. Sorry. And when you're short-sighted and ridiculous about everything as it relates to comparative measures or comparative mindset, you're going to ruin yourself. You're going to. All right? I've told you this before. There were seasons that Angela and I went through where we were deciding between toilet paper and paper towel. Things were tight. And I will tell you, we made the right decision every time. Toilet paper. Paper towels were a luxury. I personally love paper towels. I do. Not the same way I like toilet paper, but I like paper towels. And when we run out of paper towels, I have to then tell all my children, do not touch my paper towels. Because I know it's not my wife. I know it's my children who don't understand what it's like not to have paper towels. And you'd say, well, I didn't grow up with paper towels. Neither did I, which is why I like them so much. Okay? So I know we had the rag that hung on the dishwasher. That's what it was. But a crisp paper towel at the right moment changes the whole day.
Wow, I didn't realize.
Hey, I keep some of these things to myself. I don't share them with strangers on the internet.
No, obviously.
It's the small things. You know, when I started in business or working, all I wanted to do was be able to put the fuel pump in my car and go in and get a soda and not worry about what that pump said. There were times when I first started working after I was injured that I literally would stand at the pump to the penny, making sure that I could cover the cost of my fuel to get back and forth to work and save money. If you buy me paper towels for Christmas, I will be ecstatic. Okay, Anna? Don't think I will turn my nose up at them. 100, and if they are Christmas paper towels, even better. But I know what it is to live when it's lean. I know. And I do believe this, that I've kept that in mind, because as God has blessed us or moved us and changed things for us, I don't want to forget what it was like to live in that season. I don't want to forget what it's like. There were some of the greatest seasons moments in that season, as far as growth and being pushed and being molded and beginning to understand how ungrateful I actually was. How ungrateful I actually was. You know, it is the small things. It's the other day I was thinking randomly about the fact that I bought this house, and that when I bought the house, our first house, my mom was there to celebrate. And then I realized that didn't happen with this house. and how quickly things change and how things move, and to hold on to the right moments, to think about the things that are present and are good. And they may not be everything we want, but man, would I roll back time to a season where I was struggling financially and the rest to have mom around? The answer is yes. Yes. Yeah. I mean, those memories I cherish. I cherish them more and more all the time. And thinking about what is important and what is good and what is right. And this world will tell you, oh, go get this and oh, go get that. And you're walking over memories. In business, we talk about tripping over dollars to pick up dimes. You're tripping over major things because you're focused on the wrong things. Don't do it. Don't let the enemy get you into comparisons and rob you thinking, oh, the next season will be better. I'll just start looking for that. I'll just start looking more this way or that way. No. The things right in front of you are a gift. They're a gift. Suffering can be a gift. Hard times can be a gift. If it knocks the sociopath out of you, then it's a gift. It's a gift. So he goes on to say this, I'm not doing you wrong. Did you not agree to the denarius? So he said, take what is yours and go. But I want to give to the last person the same as you. Is it not lawful for me to do what I want with what is mine? Or is your eye envious because I'm generous? Notice that the comparison only came when generosity was expressed. When generosity was expressed, that's when the comparisons rose up. That's when the jealousy was exposed. That's when the anger came to the surface. In verse 16, it says, so the last shall be first, and the first shall be last. It is the same each and every time, that once we have a matrix in which we can make good and bad decisions. Up until that point, they had worked hard. They had dealt with the sun. They had dealt with this. But as soon as the landowner expressed generosity, they had a comparison. And to some degree, you could infer that some of their struggles were rooted in this. I've told you before about the studies that they've done where they asked people if they made more. And I've made these offers. Trust me. I've made these offers. And I can tell you that people struggle with certain mindsets. But there are those in their heart, because of the anger and injury and comparison and everything else, who during these interviews, if they were making $60,000 or $50,000 and they were asked, hey, if you made $100,000 a year and everybody else made 200, and you made 100, and mind you, they're only making 50 or 60 at the time. And I'm not saying that because it's a low amount. I'm saying it's because it's lower than 100. Okay. They said they wouldn't do it. But when asked if they would take less if everyone else was making less or half of what they were making, then they answered yes. Do you understand how stupid you have to be? Like how small your view of the world is? So you're working at one employer, right? You're working at one employer, a microcosm of reality. It's nothing if you will, if I can use the word, the global perspective, right? Without irritating my beloved flat earthers. Nonetheless, I say nonetheless a lot, I apologize. The rest of the world doesn't care what your coworkers are making. Only you do. The rest of the world's going to interact with you however it interacts with you. It's your mindset that's causing the issue. When these people went to the market with the denarius that they were given, the people they were buying food from didn't look at them and say, did you really earn this? You know what I mean? Did you really earn this? You know, they're going to buy and sell just like normal. That's how it goes. So when you get caught up, when you get hung up and start tripping over dollars to pick up dimes, it's a silly thing to do. Now, will I pick up dimes? Absolutely. But I ain't tripping over dollars. Did you know if you get 10 of those things, it's $1? The generosity of God is above question. His judgments continually defy the will of man because God is above all. We often struggle with this parable because we so easily side with the first workers. We always want to be the victim. Let me tell you, if you can kill the martyr in you faster or as fast as you can, the better it'll be. When you're an actual martyr, you'll be glorifying God in the process. But when you're a false martyr, oh, woe is you. Why would they not receive more than the first that were called? Or why would the first not receive more than those that were called later? Is it unfair? No. In reality, it's our concept of fairness that often leads to our disappointment, because when we're confronted with the truth, we have a decision to make. We can either double down and stay stupid, or we can relent and actually learn something. And what these people needed to learn in the parable is that before they were given purpose, they were just going to go hungry. And so instead of being happy that they were filled because they had no job, they had no purpose, they had no direction, they had no goals, they had no way of knowing what the day was going to bring them. And this landowner finds them, gives them what they need for the day. And instead of leaving content, they leave dumber. Consider what it means when you think about all the opponents of Christ. All of them were jealous. Their persecution of him, their anger with him, their discontent with his message, the fact that he constantly made them look dumb, they were jealous. And it is this spirit of jealousy that binds us, or blinds us, hold on here. Boop. There we go. Blinds us blinds us to the blessings that we are about to receive if we remain humble. There are many things that we could receive if we stay quiet. I have dealt with business opportunities or possible things where there's money to be made, but because there's this view of the value of our work, right? If we have a value of our work in our mind that doesn't fit reality, then we will constantly question whatever comes or whatever is available, right? But if the choice is between 0 and something, don't choose 0. Okay? That's what very disgruntled and small-minded individuals do. They choose 0. There is no benefit to it. All you are doing is robbing yourself of an opportunity to grow. There is investment. There's hard work, there's effort. It takes all of that, and it works together beautifully if your attitude and your heart stays in the right place. But just as this parable is, you could turn this any number of ways, but the ultimate comparison would be that the workers look at what the landowner finally makes and goes, I worked harder than you. I put in more effort with you than you. You weren't out here in the sun. You weren't out here doing this. I've dealt with this as well. It's all about issues of heart. And are we going to be long-suffering? And are we willing to work? Are we willing to work? In Psalm 116:5, it says this, gracious is the Lord and righteous. Yes, our God is compassionate. Last point tonight. Contentment is healing. Our appetites must yield. Becoming discontent with what has been provided is rebellion. This is only confusing to those who believe that we deserve more than what we have. It's possible, but it's rare. It's possible, but it's rare. There were those who took amazing risks early on in this country, and they have in other countries, who have been stripped by individuals who have infiltrated their government, and all they are about is usury and gain. That's all they're about. And let's not make any mistake, when communism came, it was just about soaking the Russians dry. It was about killing Christians by the millions. Same in China and everywhere else it has been. It is about absolutely parasitic behavior to a measure of just chaos and insanity. All right? It is absolutely the case. Each and every time you'll find a few things before communism starts taking root. It's the destruction of the house. It is the destruction of the church, the family circle. It's the involvement of things that are sexually immoral, and the abuse of children and the innocent and all the rest. It's all there every single time. And we won't begin to discuss the banks and all that other stuff that come into play. But it's the same pattern over and over again. And it's like, when's the church, and I think maybe we're there, going to stand up and say, you know what, it's enough. I don't want to see in this country us to have a Skynet-like AI surveillance system. I don't want a surveillance state. Not even a bit. Not even a bit. I don't like any of it. I don't even like traffic cameras. I don't like any of it. So I think that the more responsibility that you put upon the citizen to take care of their own well-being, the better. And if we teach brotherly love, which is, hey, we're all in this together, and let's fight with one purpose, and that's to pull one another up instead of pushing people down, I think it's there. I think the majority of our citizens are competent. I just do. I've seen them in action. I trust many of them. I'm not saying they're perfect people, but yeah. So, and I think California is like the best state in the union. 100%. I mean, look at the rest of them. Ew. It is true that we mourn losses, but we mourn because it demands that we change. It demands that we adjust. It demands that we sacrifice. It demands that we forgive. I encourage you in this, be willing to mourn. Do not remain angry. Do not become bitter and short-sighted. Remember to always play the long game. Our eyes should be fixed on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, and keep in mind that our citizenship is in heaven. And the more we accept the denial of ourselves, the more joyful we will become. I know that people teach differently. All right? I know they do. I just disagree. 1 Timothy 6, 3-7. If anyone advocates a different doctrine and does not agree with sound words, those of our Lord Jesus Christ, and with the doctrine conforming to godliness, he is conceited and understands nothing. But he has a morbid interest in controversial questions and disputes about words, out of which arise envy, strife, abusive language, evil suspicions, and constant friction between men of depraved mind and deprived of the truth, who suppose that godliness is a means of gain. I want to warn you about pastors that are in it for the money. You know what I mean? The guys that just push for more and more all the time. Usually backfires. Usually their financial life is a mess. They're dealing with bankruptcies, any number of issues in their personal life. And typically pastors are, well, at least for a long while, maybe it's better in recent years, I don't know, but typically they stink at finance. They're terrible at it. They don't know how to... My dog is losing his mind. Yeah. But they don't know how to budget. And I'm going to say this. If they can't manage their own finances, they're not going to manage their heart. It's just fact. He's fine. We're almost done. Verse 6, but godliness is actually a means to great gain when accompanied by contentment. For we have brought nothing into the world. This is how it ties in. So we cannot take anything out of it either. God found us, gave us purpose, gave us a promise of hope and restoration, and we just have to be content. We have to be faithful, consistent, and not lose our minds. Not lose our minds. I don't know what you're facing. It's probably similar to what other people are facing. But I pray for you. And you have the opportunity to thrive. But you have to want it. You got to want it. You got to forgive. You got to overcome. Put your head down. Do the hard work. You can do it. You can do it. You're not above it. Nobody is. Neither am I. I hope the best for you. I hope the rest of the week is good. Hang in there. God's faithful. Love you. 11:15 Sunday, Eagles. All right? I know a bunch of you are going camping, like almost everybody. So I will be there singing to myself, and it'll still be great. Okay? I'm not bitter. Go have a good time. See you soon.